Jurassic World Rebirth marks the 7th film in the Jurassic franchise, so today I want to rank all 7 films from the worst to the best. As always, the tiers we have on screen today are bad, meh, good, great, and best of the best. Before we get into it, I would love to hear your ranking of all 7 films in the comments down below, and subscribe if you don't want to miss my full spoiler review of the film coming to the channel very soon, along with all of those big summer movie releases. But let's get into it. Going in release order, starting it off with the original Jurassic Park. This one is going to go in best of the best, in my opinion. This is arguably one of the greatest films to ever be put to the big screen. Spielberg has had his absolute best here. I think every single character is so likable. I think the story and the plot, no matter how many times I rewatch this movie, will always be entertaining to me. I watched this film for the first time right before Jurassic World Dominion came out, and I think I've seen it 4, 5, maybe 6 times since then, and insanely rewatchable film, an instant classic. And I haven't read the original novel, but I know it's really based in these gothic horror elements that most of the films haven't really been able to translate to screen that well. I think Jurassic Park does it the best. I think Jurassic Park 3 actually takes good elements of it, and so does Jurassic World and Rebirth, which we'll talk about later. But I think Jurassic Park is where it's at its absolute peak. I just think there's so many scenes that are absolutely iconic that the rest of the franchise tries to recapture those exact moments, just never can, because Spielberg does such a phenomenal job here. Next up on the list is Jurassic Park: The Lost World. This one is going to go at meh for me. Granted, I haven't rewatched this movie since I first saw it. I really just had no interest in this. I really don't like that the original cast isn't back. I like that they're back in the 3rd film, and I think they do a good enough job continuing their story, but here, none of the side characters are really entertaining enough for me. I don't really mind the story of them going back to this island, them breeding dinosaurs without letting the public know. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 4 or 5 years after the original film. I don't mind any of that. I think it's an okay idea. I just feel like the heart and soul of what makes that first movie so good is those characters. And I don't really think any characters have obviously come close to the original one. Don't really care for many of the characters. And I just feel like the action set pieces are arguably the most underwhelming of the entire franchise, except for one more movie, which I'll get to later. This movie does continue one idea I really love throughout the original trilogy, and obviously it's present in the latter aspects of the World trilogy as well, but the idea of the theorist Ian and how he is so like anti-humans living amongst the dinosaurs, and how that is a real threat, and why dinosaurs went extinct for a reason. And I think that idea comes up really well in Rebirth as well, with Jonathan Bailey's character, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think that's the core of this movie that actually works. I just wish that overall the characters were more entertaining and interesting, but that base theorist character idea and how that evolves throughout this original trilogy, I think it does work pretty well. And then we get to Jurassic Park 3. This one is going to go at the top of meh, in my opinion. Definitely an improvement on The Lost World, and I think it wraps up this trilogy in just a sufficient enough way. I think Alan Grant is a really interesting character to come back to. Obviously, it's not really pushing anything forward. I think The Lost World has a little bit more interesting of an inciting plot that actually has to do with dinosaur research, but this one is just entertaining enough. I just think Alan it's a much more entertaining character than anyone in The Lost World. I don't have many other thoughts on this movie. I think both of the films wrapping up that first trilogy just are completely okay. They don't really ever even attempt to recapture the magic of the original film, which I can at least say the newer trilogy tries to do that, especially in the first 2 films. They don't always succeed, but at least they try. And that leads us to 2015's Jurassic World. This one is going in great for me. I would put this in best of the best, but I do think that there is a pretty large gap between how iconic Jurassic Park is and how absolutely awesome I still think Jurassic World is. I think Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard are amazing leads here, and I think the overall idea of Jurassic World is so entertaining to me. It does, to an extent, feel like that same magic of Jurassic Park. I don't think the scale and scope of dinosaurs are really as well shown here as the first film, but I don't want to keep just comparing them. I think this does exactly what a Jurassic movie needs to do for me, which is it introduces us to this new kind of futuristic idea of what dinosaurs can and are in the modern world of the film, and it executes on that idea really well. I think Grady as a character is the perfect vessel for the idea of humans will never be able to control these animals, and there is a reason they were around for millions of years and humans haven't been. The dynamic between Hope and Grady is also amazing. I think the idea with her two nephews is well done enough, and them two being split up and following that dual story narrative works the best it has in the franchise up to this point. Jurassic World is honestly one of those movies that I always go back to rewatch. I would consider it to be one of my comfort movies. I think Jurassic Park is honestly very scary at times, and this tries to do that in certain sequences, especially that opening. It's absolutely absurd. There are moments like that, and I think it just is so fun. It's such like a modern blockbuster classic in my opinion. I really do love this movie, and I honestly do like this trilogy more than most people, but I think it's mainly my bias towards this film because I just have so much fun with it. Next up is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. This one is going to go at good for me. I genuinely think that the way that this movie is able to evolve on the Jurassic franchise on a conceptual level works really, really well. The execution of it, though, is not that good. Basically, the whole final act of this movie is dinosaurs running around the basement of a rich billionaire. Like, that's kind of stupid. But I think Grady and Hope's character development is really well done here. I think going back to that island and them trying, the whole plot of them trying to get these last couple of dinosaurs to auction off, all of that works really well. They're trying to save a couple of them. There's a mix of everything that the Jurassic franchise has done really well thus far. And honestly, I think the first act and a half, 2 acts are a really cool Jurassic World movie. It's a really different concept, and it is trying to fit into this overall story that I don't feel like the Jurassic franchise has ever leaned into doing something like that, and it works really, really well. And then you get to the final act where there's a lot of things that just feel unimportant. The little girl comes into the mix, the billionaire stuff. I like the billionaire stuff when it's on the science-y genetic side. I don't really like the billionaire stuff when it's on the, I want to capture these dinosaurs and make a bunch of money off of them. Obviously the first thing is they want to make a bunch of money off of them as well, but it's not as direct of an extent, so it makes it more entertaining. But Rebirth has a similar problem in my opinion, which we'll talk about in just a second here. But before we do that, obviously Jurassic World Dominion. This is, in my opinion, the worst film of this franchise. I did a tier list of this franchise when Dominion came out, and it was, I think, number 2 or 3 from the bottom, but I've since then tried to rewatch this movie multiple times and have had no success. I can rewatch Fallen Kingdom, I can rewatch Jurassic World any day of the week, cannot get through 20 minutes of this movie. This movie isn't about dinosaurs, it's about flying locusts, and when you kind of dive into the backstory of how this movie was made, the insane amount of writers, credited and uncredited. There's over 10 writers that worked on this film from a plethora of Hollywood blockbusters. I think it's easy to say that this is a stain on humanity. This is one of the worst blockbusters in the history of cinema. It is actually horrible. And what makes this even worse isn't the fact that they tried to bring back the original cast to do some nostalgia bait legacy sequel thing. It's the fact that they made their storyline about bugs and not actual dinosaurs. There are badass scenes and there are really cool practical effects, and it feels like for the first time in the World trilogy they had nailed down the pacing of action sequences tied to actual story beats with characters. But you take the shine off of Hope and Grady, characters that I honestly really did care for through the first 2 movies, because unlike that original trilogy, we were constantly focusing on them and their dynamic and this little subliminal romance that they had going. All of that works so well, and then you throw it all out of the window because you have to focus on a whole new group of characters and try to do a bunch of throwback legacy sequel things and then focus on locusts. It makes no sense at all whatsoever. Genuinely just a movie that pisses me off every time I think about it. But finally is the newest film in the Jurassic franchise, Jurassic World Rebirth. As of now, I'm going to put this in the great tier, right below Jurassic World. I think I have about a similar rating for them. They're both kind of sitting at an 8 out of 10, but I want to rewatch Rebirth before I put it over, just because Jurassic World is such a classic blockbuster for me. But talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, I think this movie is exactly what I wanted it to be. You got Gareth Edwards at the helm. He directed Star Wars: A Rogue One Story, Godzilla 2014, and most recently The Creator. He shot this movie on film. You can tell it looks absolutely gorgeous. You got Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, Mahershala Ali. The cast goes on and on. It's an extraction team trying to get a sample from a land, air, and sea dinosaur. You are literally traversing every single cool aspect of what makes Jurassic World Jurassic World. The sets are incredible. There is so much tension, and Gareth Edwards is able to add a real horror spin to a lot of the action sequences. I won't say it's absolutely perfect, and I do think that there are a lot of character core writing issues, but I'm kind of here for dinosaurs, and we got some great dinosaur stuff. I like the characters enough and the dynamic enough for it to be entertaining, but it's not rivaling the character dynamics of, say, Grady and Hope in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom. You get mutated dinosaurs, you get all of those old dinosaurs, you get homages to the original and the world films. I think this is kind of anything you can ask for from a modern Jurassic movie that's trying to separate itself from that Jurassic World trilogy story, and rightfully so. There is that classic A-B storyline with our main extraction team and then this family that's also kind of stranded in the middle of the ocean that they end up rescuing, and I think you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit with how this entire family survives, and then a lot of the extraction team gets killed off. But at the same time, there's mutated dinosaurs, so I don't really give a shit. Definition of an awesome summer blockbuster. Sucks that this won't be getting an IMAX release, but I'm going to try to check it out in a couple different formats. Definitely want to rewatch this one. One of the most entertaining movies of the year so far. But that wraps up my ranking of all 7 Jurassic franchise films. I love this franchise. Really interested to see what they do next. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my full spoiler breakdown of Jurassic World Rebirth and ending explained, where the franchise goes from here, all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.